So I was in some bands in the 90s, including one called Redshift with my friend Angus. But that all came to an end when I set up the Record Shops Flashback in 1997, and in the same year had a baby, and so didn't do any music really for nearly 10 years. And then Angus set up a pub called the Mucky Pup, and I was sitting there in the garden one day with my friend Chris, who I'd known for a few years, and we were having a conversation. There was a bit of lull in the conversation, so I asked, "Do you play any instruments?" And Chris says, "Well, yeah, I play guitar." And I said, "Well, I never knew that." And he said, "I can't believe we've never had this conversation." So the next week, Chris came over to my house where I got a bit of a studio set up in the back room, and we recorded a track called Colin. And Colin sounded pretty good. So the next week we got together and we recorded something beginning with D. I can't remember what it was. And that was not quite so good, but still fun. And then a couple of weeks later he came over again and we recorded a track called One Step from Tokyo, which turned out to be really good. And we really liked that. Our good friend Angus was about to release a compilation album celebrating 5 or 7 years at the Mucky Pup. So we put One Step from Tokyo onto there, and it was a really good compilation album. It had bands like Pavement and Knife World and stuff, so we were in incredibly good company, and privileged to be on it, to be perfectly true, so thank you to Angus for that. So that was our first recorded output. We carried on recording. Chris would come over, he'd bring some songs with him. He was the main songwriter. He'd compose on acoustic guitar, and then I'd mess around with them and put drum beats down and add keyboards, and Chris had overdub other guitars and basses and sing the vocals. And he had an incredible facility for singing harmony vocals, because some people sing harmony vocals and it takes them about 3, 4 or even 10 takes to get the harmonies right. Chris would just go, "Right, I'm going to sing a harmony vocal," and he'd start and he'd sing it first take, and it'd be, "Yeah, fine, I'm going to sing a second harmony," do a second harmony, "Yep, fine." So I was always incredibly impressed by that. So anyway, yeah, we got on well, and Chris would come over on a regular basis, and very soon we got 8 or 10 tracks together, which we put together and released as a sort of mini album, just on CD, as demo tracks really, just called Red Horses of the Snow. So for the name Red Horses of the Snow, we spent hours and hours, mainly sitting outside pubs talking about band names. And I think it was sitting outside the Snooty Fox in Islington that we finally agreed on Red Horses of the Snow. The reasoning escapes me. I think it was basically the only band name that we both agreed wasn't completely shit. So that was that was it. So anyway, we carried on and carried on writing songs, and Chris's first kid was born, so there was a song called Rosemary's Song about her, which was fantastic. And again, we had some more tracks together after a couple of years. And so then we decided to put these out as a proper album and to release it on vinyl, have proper artwork. And so it spurred me on to set up Flashback Records, the record label, as a sort of, some might call it a vanity project, but I actually thought this is a valid way to release our records. And I thought that the quality of the stuff we did on the first album was, for a debut album, was pretty good. So yeah, that was the story up to the release of the debut album. I think that came out in 2011. It got a few nice-ish reviews, which was good. In I think Mojo and Uncut, the magazines around at the day. And yeah, we thought it was great. Nice record sleeve, gatefold sleeve, insert, nice card gatefold CD as well. So yeah, and it was an amazing moment to get the delivery of your first debut album on vinyl, which had been a dream of mine for decades really. So to finally have a record that I'd been heavily involved in, and was our record, Chris and I's record, was just that was an amazing moment, opening those boxes and finding hundreds of them. I've still got a few, by the way. So anyway, we carried on. Chris is a fantastic artist and was obviously doing the cover artwork for us, but was forging ahead with his career as an independent artist and would occasionally do, set up gallery shows and the like. And so we did a couple of singles. Well, firstly, we did a 7-inch single for Record Store Day that came out on a flashback as well. And then we did a couple of promo CDs that went along with Chris's exhibitions that were heavily linked to the mythology of the characters and the metics that you'll come across throughout the second album. Because by this time we were on to recording the second album, thinking we were very pleased with the first album, but we could do a lot better in terms of dynamics, in terms of song structure, in terms of production, and just in general, in every way, we thought we could do it better. So we had to go. And new tracks started to come out. And I was saying to Chris, do you know what? I'm not going to release the second album unless we can get a live band together. Because one of the problems with the first album was after we'd released it, nothing happened to maintain any interest. And so I thought, if I'm going to release the second album and Flashback are going to pay for it, then we need to see some sort of continuing interest developing in the band. And the only way to do that really is to have a live setup, so that fans can come and see you play, you can still be in the news, you can still be relevant. And so I kind of said to Chris, I'm not releasing the second album unless we get a live band together. And Chris incredibly reluctantly said, yeah, all right. And so, yeah, we started playing. And we've been encouraged by Graham Murphy, who I still work with today, who was a very talented guitarist, and we persuaded Mark Davidson, slightly against his better judgment, but he's such a nice guy, he agreed to come and be our drummer. And we rehearsed in the basement in the Flashback in Shoreditch, and played a few gigs. And yeah, it was great fun. I remember the gig in Flashback downstairs in the Shoreditch shop was fantastic, and I think it was also our guitarist Graham's first date proper, because he disappeared off Sharpish immediately afterwards with his future wife, and they're together and have 2 children now. So yeah, it was a nice thing for that to have happened there. So yeah, we played some gigs, some nice gigs, and we were developing the second album, but money was getting tighter, and Chris's family was expanding. I'd set up this third shop, in fact, in Shoreditch in 2014, and so we had plans for the second album. We got together 15 or so really, really good tracks that we were very proud of and thought were a huge leap ahead from the first album. And we had plans to release them, but the timing was never quite right. And then Chris and Victoria moved off to Greece, which meant that the live activities obviously had to stop. And so the prospect of releasing the album sort of got put on a back burner a little bit. I mean, we always had ideas of how to do it. We had very complex ideas of gatefold, fold-out sleeves, and yeah, unfortunately, it never really came to happen. So yeah, we got the artwork for the second album, but the time was never quite right, or the money was never quite there to release it. And yeah, Chris had moved to Greece with Victoria and the kids, so yeah, it kind of fizzled out a bit, and then we had COVID and lockdown, and so there was a period when we were trying to raise money for Flashback, because Flashback had to close down completely for about 9 months. So we decided we'd put out a shorter form of the album, just 8 tracks out of the 14 or 15 that we'd originally planned, as a download only in lockdown, and we did that, and it sold a few copies. but it felt half finished and unsatisfying, really. And ever since then, I go and see Chris regularly in Greece, and he's back over here seeing his parents a lot, and so we still hang out and chat on the phone quite a lot. And we keep on saying we've got to release this album properly. We've got to do it. And then at the beginning of this year, it just seemed like, for some reason, it just seemed like the right time. And I listened back to the album and I just said, look, we've got to do this as a proper thing. We've got to release it as a proper gatefold double album. We've got to put all of the tracks together, because the tracks they're not directly connected in terms of there being a story going through it, but they are directly connected. A lot of the tracks involve characters called the Metics, who are kind of mythical archetype characters, each of them with a specific look that's quite sort of bony, big proboscis, cowled sort of figures, and but all with different personalities and different traits and different aspects. And these characters pop up in the lyrics to the songs and join the whole thing together in a form of concept, but without it being a story told from start to finish. It's more thematically connected through the use of the Metics. Chris's video art and a lot of his paintings, which I absolutely adore, I've got quite a lot of them hanging up around here at the moment, employ the Metics and their presence and their clothes, and they've been a focus of its work for maybe 10 years or so now. And so it seemed absolutely right that now is the time to release March, which features all of these characters. It feels a little bit like an album that I released on the Flashback label by a band called Levitation, because I'd had a cassette given to me by one of the later members of the band of the second album by this band, Levitation, which, because the band disintegrated, never really got a good release, or a proper release. Now it turns out that Chris is a massive fan of this album as well, and so we were sort of in cahoots, thinking, how can we get this album released? And it so happened that I got in touch with a guy, Callie, who was the sort of manager of the band. Levitation are a difficult band to pin down because they are very strong characters, and so they've been trying to release this second album for years, but always hit problems with record labels or whatever. But I was in the right place at the right time, and they decided to go with Flashback to release this second album, Meanwhile Gardens. And it's an absolute masterpiece, but it's been sitting there for since 1992, and I think we put it out in 2014 or 2015. So it was over 20 years old when we put it out. And this second album of the Red Horses March feels a little bit like that, in that it's been sitting really waiting for a proper release for about over 10 years now. So I'm very, very proud of it, and I'm very happy that it is now coming out. And to celebrate, Chris and I are getting back together and playing some songs live in a few weeks' time, on the 25th of April, which is the date of the release of the album. And that's going to be fun. We're just doing it as a sort of semi-acoustic type thing, but that's as part of another of Chris's exhibitions in Margate, also organised by Angus. So there's a sort of completeness, there's a nice sort of a circle coming together there. So anyway, there we are. I really, really enjoyed the time with Chris. He's a bit of a hard taskmaster. I'd spend ages composing these mixes and sending them off to him, and he'd send back some I wouldn't quite call it criticism, but it was basically criticism. And I'd go, okay, yeah, the bass is too high on that, or you need another guitar on that, or whatever. And there was a long process of back and forth, but it was a very constructive process, because by the end, I think we had what sounded a very cohesive and complex, but beautiful and quite mellow and cohesive album. So I'm really happy with it. I also made Chris, when he thought he'd done something really well, I thought he'd done it really well, but he could do better, and he got told to do it again quite often, which I think slightly irked him, but he always did, and quite often it was indeed better. So we ended up with a really good album, and I'm very happy with that. So yeah, this is the next chapter of Red Horses of the Stowe. I don't know how many more chapters, if any, there will be, but the future is an open book.